A horse having a difficult time giving birth runs into the forest and finds a pack of wolves. Her owner watches in fear as the wolves use their teeth to help deliver the foal. What happens next makes him cry. Marvin was looking everywhere for his horse. He checked every corner of his property, but he began to think she might have gone into the woods. His land bordered the national forest, but he never put up a wall next to the small fence between them. Now he had to search a huge area. Marvin had other animals, but Misty was his favorite. He loved her a lot, and today he was even more worried than usual because she had been in labor when he last saw her. He searched all her favorite spots, but couldn't find her. He was really worried and heading towards the river when he spotted Misty in the forest, but she wasn't alone. She was surrounded by a pack of wolves. Marvin was really scared and panicking. He was too far away to do anything to help his horse, but he hoped that if he yelled loud enough, the wolves might run away. Marvin started shouting and waving his arms, and it caught the wolves' attention right away. When they turned towards him, he felt frozen with fear. One of the wolves had a scar on its nose, which instantly brought Marvin back to another day in the forest. On that day, he was riding Misty for fun. They were enjoying the freedom of running through the forest together. Marvin was amazed by the experience, but suddenly, Misty stopped and listened. Marvin wanted to go back home, but Misty refused to move. He tried to go another way, but she insisted on making her own path deeper into the forest. She would stop every few seconds and listen, then continue on her way. She brought him to a side of the hill and stopped in front of an opening in the rocks. It looked like a wolf mom and her puppies were using it as a den, but something horrible had happened there. It looked like the mother wolf had been in some sort of fight. She had lost a lot of blood and was beyond help. Her cubs were very young, but they seemed healthy. It looked like Misty had realized that there was someone that needed them. The wolf cubs ran around her, and instead of being nervous, she nuzzled them softly and let them sniff her legs. Marvin wasn't sure what to do with them, but he knew they had to help them. He took one last look at the mother to make sure she was beyond saving, and with a final sigh, he started grabbing the cubs. Since Misty had no issues with them, he placed them in the saddlebags and closed them in. Then he took them home. Marvin fed them and kept looking after them, but they remained completely devoted to the horse. Marvin made sure that they spent plenty of time outside. When they were still very young, he let them play in a small fenced-in area that he used for medical checks on animals. It was large enough for them to freely roam, but small enough to keep them safe. One day, the wolf cubs were playing in their enclosure while Misty was in the pasture. Suddenly, they started howling loudly, catching Misty's attention. She immediately raced over to them. Misty easily opened the pasture gate by leaning against it. Then she hurried over to the enclosure where the wolf pups were playing. Marvin heard the noise while he was feeding his goats and came out just in time to see Misty racing past. She tried to push open the gate to the enclosure, but it wouldn't move. That's when she stood on her hind legs and pushed hard against the gate. It swung open with a crash, sending pieces of wire flying everywhere. Misty dashed inside, and shortly after, Marvin followed her in. The cubs were barking at something, and he pushed past the mare to see what it was. In the quick glimpse he caught, Marvin could see that it was a snake, and not just any snake, but one of the most dangerous reptiles in the area. If it bit one of the cubs, they would have no chance of survival. Normally, wolf pups would learn from their mother to steer clear of these creatures, but since she wasn't around to teach them, they were acting out of curiosity alone. But this game could cost one or more of them their lives. Both Marvin and Misty were attached to the wolf pups and would be devastated if they lost any of them. The horse acted much faster than Marvin could. She stomped on the snake and kicked away what was left. If it had been up to him, Marvin would have taken it away to release, but Misty's protective instinct had kicked in, prompting her to do whatever it took to save the cubs from danger. Marvin felt relieved for a moment, but then he was startled again when he noticed one of the wolf puppies with a cut across his nose. Had the snake bitten him? Marvin quickly picked up the puppy and rushed to get his first aid kit. The horse and the other pups followed them, unsure of what was happening. Even though this pup was usually the most energetic, now he lay calmly in Marvin's arms, which worried him. Was the snake venom already affecting him? Marvin tried to stay calm as he examined the wound under a light and cleaned it. To his surprise, there were no marks from snake fangs. His suspicion grew when he found a piece of wire fence in the wound, confirming that the puppy wasn't bitten by a snake. Luckily, the wire had only cut his nose, not his eyes or anywhere more dangerous. Marvin treated the wound over the next few days, and although it didn't get infected, it left a scar where fur never grew back on the puppy's nose. The wolf pups became like family, with Misty acting as their mother figure. Marvin hoped they would return to the wild as they grew older. He tried to encourage them to move into the forest, but they preferred staying near Misty in the stable or in the open enclosure he built for them. As they grew, they became more restless, spending longer periods away from Marvin's place each day, signaling their growing independence. Then one day, they just didn't come back. They had gone to the wild where they belonged. Misty had been sad about their departure, but only a few years later, she found out she was expecting her very own baby. Her wolf family had left her, but she was about to build another one. Marvin watched her closely during her pregnancy and had an equine vet come out to the cabin every 2 weeks to check on her. Everything went smoothly for months, but when labor started, he wasn't happy with the way she was progressing. She was very restless and seemed to be struggling. The labor was taking too long, and Marvin wanted the vet to come out and check on her. But when he came back after the call, he found the gate open and the horse gone. At that moment, he completely forgot about the vet and rushed out to search for her. When he found her surrounded by wolves, he felt terrified. But the moment Marvin looked into the wolf's face and realized he had a scar on his nose, relief washed over him. These were the babies he had raised with Misty. He was sure they could never hurt their adoptive mother. But just as soon as that thought popped up, doubt crept in too. They had been wild for a few years now. Could they have forgotten the horse? Could they be jealous of her baby? He recognized the 3 cubs they had raised, but there were more wolves added to the family, completely wild wolves that might injure them. But Misty didn't have time to decide whether to keep pushing or not. The baby was coming. Marvin saw the head, and when the wolves used their sharp fangs to pull the foal from Misty, he feared they would harm it. Misty let out an exhausted neigh and crouched down beside the pack. She was too tired to fight the wolves, and Marvin felt his heart ache for what might happen next. But he didn't need to worry. Once the foal was free, the wolves gently placed him down and began licking him as if he were their own puppy. He was their adopted brother, after all. They cleaned him tenderly and nudged him to stand up. It was amazing to see how quickly their bond with Misty transferred to her new baby. Marvin watched with tears in his eyes as they also checked on Misty. She appeared calm now, even though tired. Her wolf baby surrounded her, cuddling close as she lay down. They even licked her to offer comfort. It was a beautiful sight. Marvin interrupted this sweet moment to check on the mom and her baby. The rest of the new wolf pack kept their distance, while the wolves raised by them jumped around Marvin in greeting. He reached out to scratch their heads as he used to, but then pulled his hand back. They might not be used to that anymore. However, the wolf with the scar approached, bending his head to place it in Marvin's hand. They had missed the scratches. It felt like a family reunion. Misty and her baby were doing fine, but as it got late and dark, she knew it was time to head home. She stood up, and Marvin carried the new baby back. The little foal wasn't strong enough to walk all the way. Marvin thought they'd have to say goodbye to the wolves, but surprisingly, they followed along. They even watched as Marvin put Misty and her baby in their stable for rest. He worried a bit about his other animals with wild wolves nearby, but his original pack seemed to warn them these were friends, not food. None of his goats or other animals were harmed by the wolves. Even more surprising, the wolves decided they liked home. They went to their den, which still had their bedding and water bowl, and went inside when Marvin opened the door. They stayed a few days, watching the foal grow, then left. Without the pack, Misty and her baby would have been lost. It was sad to see them leave, but Marvin was glad they came when needed. After, he often saw the wolves visit to rest and enjoy Marvin's company. They had it all, and Marvin was glad to help. What do you think of this story? Let us know in the comments section. I hope you like it. Please give it a thumbs up and share it with your loved ones. Also subscribe and press the bell icon to never miss the update from our channel. Thank you.